here and warm here. Now in the summer, the whole thing is completely reversed, because in the summer, this is where it gets hot. Here, it might be 95 here, 85 here, and maybe 75 next to the water tank, because the water tank hangs out at about 50 in the winter and 75 in the summer. So if you're trying to grow cool weather crops in the summer, put them near the water tank, and all your heat-loving crops are here on the outer bed, because they don't rhyme. And the other thing in terms of microclimates is that if you put some trellises up on the south side and grow some like climbing crops, like tall plants, beans, cucumber, tomatoes, squash, peppers, and have them climb up the trellis, well, what happens then is that they provide shade for the rest of the plants, especially on the west side, because what happens in the morning, you get the eastern sun, it rises, and the dome gradually starts to warm up. And by about 11 o'clock, it's pretty nice and warm in there. And then as the sun keeps going across the sky, by about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, it's pretty warm. So if you grow, I put my fig tree on my west side, because in the summer, I put my grapevines on the west side, because that western summer late afternoon sun is really going to challenge your plants. And so if you provide some shade with big plants on the west side, you're really ahead of the game. So in terms of microclimates, orchids, I put orchids on the crossbar of the tank, because that's the most stable and most humid place to be. Orchids like a stable environment, like a humid, warm environment. Yes?
Did you put your grape on the south side?
Southwest.
Southwest.
Well, I have two grapes. I have one on the west and the other on the northwest. Because in the late summer, the sun even goes around to the northwest, and you get that late afternoon sun. And last year was the first year I had grapes.
When you measure your soils, do you measure them in the raised bed?
When I measure what?
Your soil temperatures from your south to your north, do you measure them in the raised bed?
No, that's the air temperature.
That's the air
Not
temperature.
soil temperature, yeah, it's a whole other story. Any other questions?
How long were your grapes growing when you got grapes?
Well, I inherited a dome, fortunately, and it came with a grapevine. And so it was well established, but the guy hired to take the dome down didn't really understand my instruction. He kind of decimated the grapevine. He just completely cut everything off. So all I got was a piece of stem about that big. I've forgiven him since, eventually. What happened was, it didn't mind, it recovered. Well, there were two of them actually. All right, I just want to say one more thing to conclude microclimates within the growing dome, and that is the plants themselves create their own microclimate. And in the summer, in the growing dome, people are constantly telling me, oh, my dome's hot, it's too hot, it's overheating, and in spite of the automatic vents and the cooling fans, etc. I say, well, what do you have growing in there? Oh, I don't have anything growing. It's like, well, no wonder it's overheating. And the reason is that the sun shines on the dirt in the dome if it's bare dirt with no plants. And then the dirt gets hot, and so you've got 20 tons of dirt at 105 degrees, whereas you've got plants growing, the big foliage leaves of the plants shade the soil, and so you've got 20 tons of soil at 75 degrees. So people with a new dome, as soon as you get some plants started and put in there, start putting plants in. Because the plants cool the dome in two ways. Firstly, as you water the garden, the plants are always transpiring that moisture and evaporating, so they become evaporative coolers themselves by the very act of transpiration. Secondly, Luckily, in the summer, the plants that grow in the summer, squash, cucumber, pepper, tomatoes, they have big amounts of foliage. We're actually eating the fruit of all these plants, whereas most of the winter plants were either eating the roots or the leaves. And so in order to produce the fruits, they got to get all this foliage together, and the foliage creates the nutrients that goes into the fruit. So the big leaves shade the soil. So in the summer, the more like a jungle your dome looks, the nice and better, cooler it is. We had one gentleman who had a center bed that was all gravel, and he was experiencing overheating. And after we changed it out for plants, the dome was 20 degrees cooler on a hot summer day. Sometimes on a hot day, my dome can be cooler than the outside, simply because of the plants.
That's just what I was going to say about the Coralight Dome in Santa Fe, that it was cooler in the dome than outside in the summer.
Exactly.
And also, people think that they can't open their door. We have our door open all summer, but we have a screen door. We put in a screen door so that the chipmunks won't come in, and that's a really important way of ventilating as well.
Yeah, that's wonderful. The other thing is, last summer, it was admittedly a cool summer, so I didn't perhaps totally camp, but you remember I told you about being given these grapevines, and there was an arbor. Well, along with the grapevines came a hitchhiker, and this was an apricot tree. But unfortunately, you know, I told you the guy cut down the grapevine, he also cut down the apricot tree, and so it was just a stump about this high. And all fruit trees have what's called a stalk and a scion. The stalk is the part that's in the ground, and then about that much comes out of the ground, and then grafted is the scion that determines the type of fruit. The stalk determines the vigor and the size of the eventual tree. So we have an apricot piece of stalk, and that started putting out leaves, and it started putting out branches. And by the end of the summer, that thing had grown up to the ceiling. It was a very vigorous growing apricot. And there was enough foliage on that tree to cool the whole of the dome. I never even fixed up my extension cord to power my cooling fans. I had the top bench working, I had a screen door, I had the shutters to the cooling fans opening, but that tree provided enough cooling to cool the whole dome.